Namaskar. This is Akhilesh Bhargav. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. A recent report in the Mint newspaper spoke about the inequality of opportunities in India with particular reference to the education sector. It spoke about the rising inequality in the matter of opportunity and income between the better educated and the undereducated families in India. And it said that as per a World Bank study, the children of undereducated parents in India find it much more difficult to rise up the education and income ladder than they do in comparable developing countries like China, Brazil, Indonesia, Egypt, and even Nigeria. It then says that the pandemic induced lockdown has now widened this gap of opportunities of learning between the children of undereducated families versus those of better educated families even more. It says that children of poorer and underprivileged families have been falling behind their peers even further because of this lockdown, which has impacted their education. Mint then says that the length of school closures in India due to the pandemic is among the highest in the world. It has affected 300 million children across India, and the most affected are children of those families who do not own or who cannot afford a smartphone, because of which they are not able to take online classes. Their school education suffers. With no computers and smartphones, their struggle is much more in the current digitized environment with simply no alternate to learning and working on these devices, which is they need smartphones and they need computers, and that is what they cannot afford. Mint then says that as per the NGO Pratham, these underprivileged children receive the least attention from the teachers and the school, and in their case, the temptation to drop out of school and work in order to boost the sagging family income is the most as compared to others. The impact of such inequality of opportunity in learning lasts a lifetime, and their peers just go ahead of them. It impacts the lifetime of earnings for the students from these underprivileged families. And finally, Mint says, it points out that while even during the normal years of the pre-COVID times, the children from affluent and better educated families were able to learn and earn more than those from undereducated families. The gap between the two on account of the COVID pandemic and the lockdown that it has imposed has only widened further. In other words, inequalities have shot up. If the Mint report talks about the widening inequality of opportunities in learning and earning, then the former Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank, Dr. Viral Acharya, in a Bloomberg report speaks about the aggravation of inequality in India on account of the monetary policies of the Reserve Bank of India and the fiscal policy of the government. Dr. Viral Acharya pertinently points out that the record low interest rates due to the accommodative monetary policy of the Reserve Bank of India are mainly benefiting the large companies and the formal economy and not the small entities and the informal economy. He then says that India's easy monetary policy response to the pandemic, it risks stoking income inequalities and asset price bubbles in India, and that more fiscal support is needed according to him, particularly for the poor and vulnerable sections of society who are not benefiting from this accommodative monetary policy. The next he says is that the government needs to focus on direct benefit transfers in order to address these inequalities where money is needed by the needy sections. He says that the need is to focus on the poor, the women, and the vast informal economy where jobs have been lost and entities have been shut down on account of COVID. He then says that the easy monetary stance is fueling inequality by encouraging inflation, and because the government's fiscal policy is not enough, it is inadequate. The Reserve Bank's monetary policy has been forced to remain accommodative for very long, despite the rising inflation, which does not need an accommodative policy. The hawkish former Deputy Governor of RBI is not sure whether the booming corporate profits today are a sign of an economic rebound or they are because of companies squeezing the workers and their other cost savings. He finally also points out that India is experiencing a K-shaped recovery, where due to the difference in the pace of recovery, the big ones are growing bigger and the small ones are only growing smaller and probably closing down. And thus, the inequality gap between the two is only increasing. Both these reports of the Mint and of Bloomberg, and also recent reports which have come from the likes of the World Bank, IMF, Pew Research, Standard & Poor, etc., they all confirm the rapid increase in inequality worldwide, and it has most severely occurred in India. While inequality was always there in society in terms of income, wealth, or opportunity, it has now widened further, and it will take many years to resolve, if at all we are able to do so. Historical data says that once inequality in society and in the economy shoots up, it becomes very difficult to bring it down. And that's what India is going to face. While the Mint speaks about inequality in education opportunities, and Dr. Acharya speaks about inequality being a toxic side effect of India's prolonged accommodative monetary policies and also the poor fiscal support which has come from the government of India, the fact, however, is that inequality is endemic and widespread in India across the board, across the society, and it manifests in various forms, all of which together only breed further inequality, making it very clear that it is all pervasive in our lives and in our livelihood. And what are the other factors which show it? The first one, access to government babus and netas and getting favors and approvals from them is given exclusively to the big ones and not to the small ones. They neither get favors nor do they get any approvals. They don't even get their rights. The second one, if you want loans from banks and financial institutions, the big ones get their tens of thousands of crores easily, while the small one struggles even for a mere loan of a few lakhs. After loans are taken, when it comes to default, recovery and settlement, the big ones get massive haircuts and massive write-offs, while in the case of the small one, he probably loses his house in the process. The system support during the pandemic crisis in order to revive and come back has been maximum to the big ones, and that shows in the upsurge in sales and profitability and the opportunities to earn which has come to the big ones, and the small ones have been closing down. Because of that, the pace of recovery out of the current economic crisis has been far rapid and easy for the big ones. The small ones have downsized or they have closed down. All the benefits of being a crony or a favorite of the system go to the big ones, not to the small one. They get access to domestic markets, they get access to markets abroad. The next one comes in the ability to comply with the ever-increasing and unnecessary complex laws. It is easy for the big ones, not for the small ones, they perish. Even the flagship PLI scheme of the government of India to revive India's manufacturing sector favors the big one. The small ones do not even have the ability to fight the system and protect their rights and dues. In fact, they very often get bullied and cheated by the big ones and even by the government. See how Videocon has cheated all its small vendors and suppliers. The next, laws may be made in order to prevent the big fraudsters, but all those laws get actually implemented on the smaller ones. And finally, the regressive indirect taxes also breed inequality. While inequality is a reality, let us also see a few hard-hitting facts related to inequality for all of us to ponder over this crisis. The first one, while the Indian economy contracted by 10% in financial year 2021, at that time when the economy was contracting, the wealth of India's top billionaires went up by 40%. The next one, globalization has reduced inequality among nations, but it has actually increased inequality within nations. The third one, the nations with the highest inequality of wealth are Netherlands, Russia, Sweden, USA, Brazil, Thailand, and Denmark in that order. India comes at number 12. The point is, it is there all over the world. The next one, in 1990, the top 1% of Indians earned 11% of the nation's income. That same figure in 2019 has shot up to 21%, showing the kind of huge increase in income and wealth of the big ones over this period. And finally, the total wealth of India's top 9 billionaires exceeds the total wealth of the bottom one half of India's population. the wealth of 9 individuals is more than an entire 50% of India's population. That's the kind of inequality that we are seeing. It's not just an economic crisis, it's going to become a bigger social and political crisis, and the government needs to be seized of it. This is Akhilesh Bhargav signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.